Today, I will be the only presenter during this symposium. But I will present on behalf of my colleagues, Victoria, Vala, and Junchin, and Fabi. I will present their research as well, so you will have a kind of idea about what we are doing as a group. Well, I'm saying this because if you really don't want to listen Nikolai for 1.5 hours, you can then leave the room and join another session. There are many interesting options. Okay? Okay. So let's begin. I have to rearrange my. I have to rearrange slightly my screens to make it more comfortable for me. Welcome to the symposium, and the topic of the symposium, as you know, is cultural historical genetic research methodology, briefly GRM. And what I want to discuss today, what we want to discuss today as a group, is how can it inform research in education, or discovering cultural historical methodology for research in education. You can select any title you prefer. Well, warning, in my presentation, I will not speak about social cultural theory. I will not speak about cultural historical activity theory. With all my respect to these great theories, I will not speak about it. My focus will be on the cultural historical theory, or how you call it in Brazil, historical cultural theory, okay? So we will look at Vygotsky's theory today. Just to clarify the idea of this symposium, this slide might help you. So first of all, we will discuss what is this cultural historical genetic research methodology, how this methodology might be used in educational research, and how this methodology is used in educational research. I will show you several examples of the application of this methodology to the concrete educational research, and how this methodology works, and what kind of research questions might be generated if we really use this as our methodology. And to begin with, I just want to show this list. I have developed this methodology about 10 years ago, and it was developed in the field of psychology. It was a psychological experimental method. But then, for last 10 years, from 2011 till now, I'm trying to adapt this poorly psychological experimental methodology into the field of education research, because education research is different from the from psychology, because we often do not bring children to specially equipped laboratory. Sometimes we go and observe children in their natural settings, family settings, school settings, their care center settings, and I did it with the help of my colleagues and for my PhD students. And what I'm going to focus today is to show how to apply this research methodology into the education research we are all doing. Well, I just want to draw attention to this. I think it looks very familiar to many of you. When we speak about development, the first idea which comes to our mind, the teacher's mind, is this: domains of development and milestones of development, right? Well, these are indicators, milestones which show if the development goes okay, if there are delays of development or something like that. So, and these all are phenomenological representation of the developmental milestones and outcomes, which is quite popular and quite easy to use. But in principle, this is a kind of symptomatic picture, because the child should be able to demonstrate certain traits at certain age, a certain period of time. If the child does not demonstrate these, it signifies that there is a problem. But it doesn't give the answer. It does not give the answer. What is the real problem? Okay, if the child, for example, is unable at 12 months to say verbal, non-verbal, expressive language, we can say, yeah, that's a problem. But what are the reasons? What are the causes of the problem? This model doesn't give us the answer. And even more, as educators, we don't only need to know the problem to understand the problem. We have to have enough tools to resolve the problem. Like doctors, first they are collecting analysis, and then they prescribe treatment. Well, and therefore, with all respect to this approach, I invite you to make a journey into the problem of how we can research development and how we can help children, how we can create conditions which support child's development, instead of just observing the child and indicating problem here, problem there, problem there. So that's why we have to start from Vygotsky. You see, this quotation shows that if we take Vygotsky's perspective, we have to take the idea that child development is a complex dialectical process, which characterizes by many, many aspects, including contradictions, neoformations, qualitative changes, reorganizations. Well, this is quite a complex picture. If you look at this citation closely, you will see the most common word here is complex. You see, complex dialectical process characterized by complex periodicity, metamorphosis, complex merging, okay, complex process of overcoming difficulties. You see, complex. So Vygotsky is sending us a message. He's saying that if you really want to understand development, if you really want to make a research on development, first of all, we have to understand that this is a very complex process which cannot be described by one very simple, superficial methods or characteristics. We need to find the tools. We need to find the tools to support this complex process of development, to help the child to solve the problem on this very complex way. Well, that's why it's not easy to disclose the dialectical character of development. But of course, there is a way. And this way we call genetic research methodology. It is genetic, but please don't be afraid about the word genetic. It is not about genes. It's not about biology. It's about genesis. It's about genesis, which means development. And here we understand genesis, development, as a social cultural process, not biologically driven, but social cultural process, cultural development or cultural psychological development, if you like. So this is research, genetic research, because it gives us some instruments, some tools, practical tools to collect the data and then to analyze the data. That's why it helps us to do a genetic research, to focus our lens, research lens, to the process of development, not just on the superficial manifestations, from phenomenology into the analysis of the process of development. And this is genetic research methodology because it includes theoretical tools, concepts, theoretical concepts, and research principles, the requirements of how we can organize the research design, how we can make a research design in order for this design, to help us to get under the water, to see how the child develops, not only to make the statistical or just quantitative methods, but to look on the whole process. So, and well, as I said, Vygotsky has developed this method as a psychological method. And here is the quotation from Vygotsky. It's from volume 4. What is interesting here is the idea of using this method. We create a special conditions, artificially creating conditions for the process of genesis. So, and Vygotsky says, because of this, we are able experimentally in the laboratory to elicit a certain development. So it was designed as a typical psychological laboratory method. And in Vygotsky's collected works, you can find a lot of examples of how laboratory works and what kind of experimentation Vygotsky did with children and adults at different ages. So it was purely psychological methodology, psychological method. And as I said, my task was to find the ways how we can apply this purely laboratory psychological experimentation into the educational research, which is not experimental mostly. We mostly making observations and sometimes interventions, but we cannot call these psychological experiments, right? Well, and well, this is what methodology is. Genetic, cultural, historical, genetic research methodology. So, first of all, we are not taking objects on the study. We are not taking units of analysis even. What we are interested in is to make a research on the process of development. The process of development. So the process, origins and development of high psychological functions of the child is the subject matter of cultural historical theory. But as we just said, development is a very complex and dialectical process. To make it clear, below is the list of the most important, most dialectically important aspects or dimensions of the complex process of development. From the point of view of dialectics, I mean Hegel's dialectics. So the most important aspects of development are these: sources of development, character of development, moving forces, main directions, specific features, and results. These are 6 most important aspects and dimensions of the complex process of development. And taking this, we can create our research strategy to be focused on sources of development or moving forces of development or main directions or results, depending on our research question. Okay, but to make the research, we need a research tools. We need the instruments. It's like medical doctors when they make a surgery, they use tools. So we also need the tools. And in this methodology I'm speaking on, there are 2 groups of tools interrelated to each other. Look at the left. The first set of tools are theoretical tools. Theoretical tools, concepts of the culture of historical theories. And examples of these concepts are these. For example, it might be zone of proximal development as a concept, or social situation of development, okay, or ideal and real forms, or high psychological function. These are tools. These concepts are not just abstractions. For us, cultural historical theory is a system of concepts which are not just pure abstractions. They are theoretical tools for analysis of the data we are collecting. That's very important. We are not using this as general labels. We are using them as analytical tools. I will show later how it works, but that's one side. On the other side, if you only have theoretical tools in your hands, you cannot directly apply the theoretical tools for your data. You need a special experimental design to collect this data, because we don't need the typical data. We need the data which reflects the process of development. We have to somehow unpack or unfold the whole process of development, which is mostly hidden from our eyes. So we have to look inside, and we have to reconstruct. We have to generate the process of development during the experiment, during our research project. And then doing this, we are collecting the data. We are collecting the data which reflects the dynamics of this process, not the results, not the manifestations, not the phenomenological side. We are trying to create the process of development, or micro development, and observe this process, and then through this collect the data. For this, we need a special requirements, how we can make an experimental design, how we can generate the processes of micro development during our study, to make them observable, and to make them observable and then analyzable. So you see, these two sides are both very important, and altogether, theoretical and experimental creates together what we call genetic research methodology. And you see, what Vygotsky suggests is that when we consciously and coherently use this method, we can make interesting transition, or at least 3 transitions. We can change our lens, our research lens, from studying of existing psychological structures or processes to studying the process of their appearance. Then it will help us to make a transition, to shift from descriptive analysis, from describing how things are looking, this looks like this looks like that, to explanatory analysis. We collect the data which helps us to explain what is going and why something is going this way but not that way. Because what we are studying is the process of development. And lastly, this methodology helps us to make a shift from using the ideas of patterns, similarities, when we see several phenomena, and then we unify them in one pattern because they look similar. Sometimes things which look similar, they are different by their nature. Sometimes things which are looking different are in fact similar because they have the same history, the same genesis. So this method helps me as a researcher to make patterns of my data, not according of their similarities of how they look of the images, but according to their common history, individual history, common process. Okay. Well, you see, this changes the focus on from describing phenomena to explaining the development. From this, which might look like a great mountain, to this, and this great mountain is nothing else, just a small tip of the iceberg. And we will never understand why this looks like this if we have no idea about all of this. Yeah. Well, and therefore, when we do research, and I will come to the examples a little bit later today, when we do research, we have actually two tasks. First, we have to select a number of theoretical concepts we are going to use. This is a theoretical framework. And then we have to select the experimental tools, how we are going to organize the experiment to collect the data we need. And the problem was here, because he had an explanation of experimental genetic method, but he had no time to develop this method as a list of concrete requirements. What should be done to make this particular study, this particular research program? What are the criteria which makes this particular research program the cultural, historical research methodology? And just to fit this gap, I have developed and suggested about, as I said, about 10 years ago, the 5 principles of genetic research methodology. These 5 principles are the principles according to which, or on the basis of which, we can build our research program. We can build our research program. And I will show you the examples of these research programs a little bit later. And now, if you don't mind, I will speak about each of these principles with the examples of the research programs, how these principles are implemented and how the research was designed. The first principle, the first idea of this methodology is what we call the principle of buds of development. Buds of development. This is very interesting because when we work with particular child or particular children, we see the interesting situation from the point of view of the development, because in children there are some psychological processes which are already quite well developed. And at the same time, there are some psychological processes which are in the middle of their developmental course. They are not underdeveloped, but they're not yet developed. They are maturing functions. And there are some psychological processes which are at the embryonic stage. They are buds of development. That's why Vygotsky called them buds, flowers, and fruits of development. This is a very strong metaphor, by the way, buds, flowers, and fruits. Look, if you look on the tree, depending on the season, the tree has buds, then flowers, then fruits. But when you look at the chart, we have to understand that there are buds and flowers and fruits at the same time. For example, if you take a preschool child, preschool children, typically at this age, memory is already quite well developed psychological functions at this age. Memory is quite developed. But for example, conceptual thinking is not. You might say that development of memory, is nearly a fruit of development. At the same time, thinking, especially conceptual thinking, of course, is at an embryonic stage. So every age is characterized. Even we adults, we don't have all our high psychological functions equally developed. Some people have much more developed thinking than memory. Some people have more developed memory than thinking. So every time we have a unique combination of the functions or processes which are at different stage of development. That's a very complex picture, and this is a dialectics here of the complexity. So To disclose this dialectic, the principle of paths of development was created. And this, I love this metaphor of Vygotsky. I just want you to read and to enjoy. This is a very good example of the gardener. The psychologist or the teacher or the parent who is limited to what has matured, leaving what is maturing aside, will never be able to obtain any kind of true and complete representation of the internal state of the whole development. This is a theoretical basis of this principle of the buds. And what is important here is that the fruits of development are child's individual higher psychological functions, abilities, and processes. That's true. But where are the buds? Logically, the buds also should be within the child. But we Vygotskians, we understand that development is the process of how the social becomes the individual. So the buds of development are not within the child's mind. They are in a system of social relation of the child. This is the first plan according to the general genetic law, right? Every function appears on the stage twice, first interpsychological or the social plan, and then within this child as an intrapsychological individual. So the buds of development are not in the child's mind. The buds of development exist in the form of social interaction, which through the process of rationing, internalization, transformation, becomes child's individual. So that's why the task is to identify where are the buds of development of this specific high psychological function. This principle helps us to orient our mind to searching where are the buds of development of this particular child. And to make it clear, I know I don't want this to be very theoretical. To make it clear, I will present my first example. And my first example is a research I did with my colleagues, Dr. Mary Hammer from Monash University and Dr. Victoria Jane Minson, who is now working also in Melbourne in Australian Catholic University. And we have published something together, and you can watch fantastic YouTube video made by Victoria about the method and particularly about zonoproximal development, just for reference. And I just want to acknowledge that it's not my research, we did it in collaboration. So, and this example is about this beautiful, fantastic girl called, pseudonym, called Eve. Okay? And this is the picture from the typical show and tell experience in Australia, in Melbourne. You see, this girl is very confused about making this show and tell. She did bring the monkey from home, but she was very confused to tell the story about the monkey. She just said, yes, no, monkey can jump, and this very, very, very limited ability to tell even a small story about the monkey. And that was the observation. What conclusions can we do looking at this? We might say that the girl might have problems with speech development, or if she cannot tell the story, maybe memory problems, or maybe this girl has a communication problems because she cannot tell the story to her friends, or maybe even intellectual delays. There might be different interpretations of that. But if you look at this from the cultural historical perspective, if we take the principle of buds of development to our arsenal, to our agenda, the first question is, okay, let's look at this goal and let's find where are the buds of development. And we did a specific observation of this goal for several days, just observing her in everyday typical situations. And you see what we discovered. She is 4 years old, but she has a history. Jakarta in Japan. And she is so active. She's active in dancing, in talking, playing. Physical development is okay. And her intellectual level is outstanding because she can speak about school in Jakarta, her sister dances, history, Voyagers, Union Jack representation. She can tell a story about Pompeii from Greece. So, where is the problem with the memory? Oh, no. Is there any problem in its intellect? No. Maybe she has a communication problem? No. Nothing like this. But why then this story happens? And this principle of buds of development oriented us to find the answer. Because of this principle, we did find the answer, and the answer is clear. Storytelling capacity or storytelling ability includes elements of memory and thinking and speech, only exists in interpsychological plane. Because during the dialogues with others, in a dialogue, when you are making a story together, she can make a lot of long and interesting stories. So we see that interpsychologically, on the interpsychological level, she is able to create stories, but she only needs somebody to communicate with her. So this principle was of a great help to understand where is the real problem for Eve. And also this principle was a great tool for us to understand what we need to do to help Eve to overcome this problem and to be able to tell long stories independently, individually. You see how it works. It just helps us to change our eye from the concrete situation into more general and to identify where are the buds. And the buds are here. Okay. Well, my second example is from the research of Vala Mandili. She did a research about speech development in primary schools in Saudi Arabia. And publication is here. So her task was to understand why, what's the problem? Why in Saudi primary schools, children who have 2 or 3 lessons of English every week, they still are not able to communicate in English. Even though they graduate the school, they still have problems. Several years of learning English with very, very, very limited outcome. And her idea was to understand that there is a difference between language acquisition, just learning language, vocabulary, grammar, and so on, and development of English speech, which is ability to speak in English. But speech develops as a result of communication. Communication is the source of development of speech. And that was a theoretical frame for Vala. And using this theoretical frame, She made the observations of typical lessons of English in Saudi primary schools. And these are examples of what teachers are doing with children during English classes. They are playing games, English games, of course, role games. They are listening CDs, songs, repeating songs, simple songs. They use drawings. Okay. Well, they're using a whiteboard or just boards and then cards and so on. This is a typical arsenal of tools teachers use. But what is interesting is that all these activities are mostly based on the repetition, thrilling, and training. Of course, through these, they learn new words, they learn new expressions, they are developing their vocabulary, they are developing their grammatical structures, but their language acquisition goes well. But there is no support for speech. There is no communication in the classroom, or very limited communication in English in the classroom. Teachers are communicating in Arabic, and only during these moments they're using English, but children are mostly repeating stuff rather than communicating. There is no topic to communicate. So no communication, no speech. Well, and this is one of the interesting examples. Interview of a teacher. You see, the teacher understands that interaction and communication is very important. But teacher doesn't understand that communication in class is not less important than outside. The only example teacher gives is that when she's asking the girl to go to the classroom and bring a marker, which is not included in the classroom activities. So the child needs to understand and to communicate only when teacher needs something from outside. So the whole class activities are not based on that. And therefore, communication is very limited. And because of communication is very limited, children learn language, but they don't know how to use the language to communicate. They have tools, but they don't know how to use these tools properly, because language is a tool for communication. And that was one of the results of Mandiri's research and recommendations she was given to the government of Saudi Arabia was to incorporate the communication moments as much as possible into the learning in the English curriculum in Saudi schools. Well, you see, it was a very practical research. So, summary. The first principle is speaking about the buds of development. It means that for research, we have to carefully select what process we are going to study, what particular aspect we are going to study. And the best way is just to find the process which is at the beginning of development. If it's already developed, the developmental cycle is over. We cannot do anything with it. So it focuses my eyes as a researcher to find the same way as we did find in Eve, the same way as we discovered in Saudi schools with Saudi teachers. Well, I think now we have 45 minutes over. I would suggest we have a break, and we can use this break for questions and answers. You can use chat if you like for your questions, or just use your microphone if you have something to ask or comment. And then we continue in 15 minutes, okay? What a wonderful audience, no questions. Okay, so this is a message from our monitor, Flavio. He said that please, you can put your questions through chat. Thank you, Wagner. It was very good and clear presentation. Okay, this part, Wagner, right? That's not the whole story. Okay. Okay, then you can use the break for thinking about your questions and put the questions to the chat. And we will continue in 10 minutes because it was highly recommended to make a break during the symposium. Okay, we are back in 10 minutes. Now it's 12:20 here in Australia, so we begin past. Okay, past. past works for everybody. Okay, enjoy your break. Past. Welcome back. Okay, we are back. Okay, it's exactly the time. I can wait a couple of minutes for the rest of the people to join us. And can you hear me? It's okay? Well,
yes, we can, Professor.
Okay. There are several interesting questions on the chat. The first question is from Anna. The difference between chat and cultural historical theory and social cultural theory. Since yesterday, I understand that you marked many times that there are differences between them. Yeah. First of all, it's not only me who marked that there is a difference between these theories. Yes, that's true. It's not only me. It's not only my opinion. If you have a deep knowledge about all these three theories, you understand that they are different. Okay, they are related historically. They have some relations, but they are different. And the most important difference, I don't want to make an extended answer. I just give you a direction. The most important difference is that cultural historical theory, Vygotsky, is the psychological theory of development of higher psychological functions. This is how Vygotsky himself identifies. He says that the subject of the cultural historical theory is the historical process of development of higher psychological functions of a human being. This is a theory of psychological development. But chat is not a theory of psychological development. The chat is focused on activity systems and social transformations. Okay, so this is the main difference, but of course there are many other aspects. We need a special lecture about that, but well, we can continue our discussion later. I think now you have better. So sorry, I have to be very quick, right? But I think you got the point. Okay. So the second question is from Samran and from some others about, is this only about kids or is it applicable to adults? And the answer is, of course, yes. Of course, yes. What do you think about adults? Do you think about adults as Piaget thinking, that development stops at the age of 12? Formal operation is the last stage of development, and then the whole life you are from age 12 till your death, you are on the same level? No, of course not. Development does not stop. Even adults develop. Not every adult develops, unfortunately, but every adult has an opportunity to develop. But as we are children, parents and teachers are creating conditions for our development. When we are adults, we are responsible for our development. We have to work on ourselves to develop ourselves. Nobody will come and develop us. And this is a big difference. I can give you an example. Learning language, foreign languages for adults. Do you still remember my example from Saudi schools? This is about Saudi children. This method of developing English speech through specially organized dialogues and communication in the classroom is absolutely applicable to adults. And then after these classes, the adults are able to communicate in English. Of course, first, they are very short dialogues, short communications, but they begin to speak, they begin to create their own meaning making using the words they know. They are not repeating phrases, they are building their phrases, they are building their communication process. And therefore, through this, they develop their speech. And I love Samran is asking this question because Samran is actually Samran Danishvar, who is here, who he is my PhD student, and he is doing research with adults. English second language English learners in Iran. Samran, would you like to say something about your research a little bit? Because you are working with adults.
Yes, Nikolai, if you would like.
Oh, please.
You can.
Oh yeah, of course.
So yeah, the reason that I asked this question was because I have read. So I'm developing my methodology based on experimental genetic method, and
Of
then
course.
whenever I read, and there is this maybe this sentence that this research, this method is for children or kids, and there is nothing about adults. And maybe some people think that this is just specialized for kids, and
No,
the psychological development ends when they grow.
no.
That was kind of this question. So, and yes, and about my research, yes, you know, I am focusing on the private speech of adults in a multilingual context. So then I'm researching the psychological development of adults. And yes, that was why I asked this question. And I thought that maybe this is a question for others too.
Well, so you can communicate with Samran later. His email is on the Congress website, and Samran is doing very interesting research. And I will give you one more example about how this methodology might be applicable to work with adults. But please don't forget, adults also develop, okay? And if we want to study development, when everywhere we have a development, we can use cultural historical genetic research methodology, of course, with the modification. And the last question is from Flavio. Flavio, your question requires a 1 hour long answer. But please think about, what do you mean by natural development? You are using natural development. What do you mean by natural development? Huh?
Hi, Professor. No, I was just wondering about how different, you know, a natural setting would be of an artificial created setting for research.
Okay. What do you mean by natural settings? Give me an example of natural settings.
Yeah, for example, if I am trying to learn a new language and I know that there isn't a person shooting a video of me, you know, or trying to record my private speech, for example, you know, things like this, because I'm aware that I am alone, you know, with no one else observing me in this sense.
And you think this is a natural setting?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, let's look at this natural setting. You are learning foreign language. Is language the reality which belongs to nature, like trees, fruits, sky, stones, rivers? What is language? Is language something which exists in nature or was created in human culture? Of course, language is a cultural, historical, human, right? And when you are speaking about natural settings, look at the room around you. For you, it might be natural settings because it's your everyday environment. But everything around you is made by people and represent the results of the activity, which is the culture. You are using spoons when you eat. And this is a cultural. It's natural. Yeah, for you that, yes, but somebody are using chopsticks, also cultural. So if we take cultural historical approach, we should understand clearly that process of development is a social cultural process. Every higher psychological functions are the results of social cultural process of development, but not biological natural. Okay, so that's again, it might take hours and hours. And I also had one more question to answer. Answered. Okay.
Nikolai, can
Yeah.
I make a quick comment
Oh,
on the adult?
now I see your hand raised. Okay, please, welcome.
I followed Sanam in that because for the last 2 years I had some work with I don't know how to say this politely in English, sorry, but old people, like on retired homes and so on. So of course, adults develop and older people also develop, but they develop in the different way, I think.
Yep.
Like I realized that, and I didn't, it was not a study, it was like more like an applied work to make their living conditions better. But they seem to me like their thought characteristics were more like children. But of course they are not children, because they remember when they have the capacity of the adults. So
Yeah.
so it reminded me of that text of Vygotsky on psychological systems, when he described it when the higher mental functions started to collapse.
Yes.
So
disintegration. Yeah, he called disintegration.
yes, exactly. So I was wondering also how to do this kind of research and so on. That's why I thought that was an interesting point. Thank you.
Yes, Wagner. Thank you for your question. And look, your example of like old people look and behave like children. This is of course they are not children. They are not like children, but people are looking at adults. They behave like children because they see the similarities, superficial similarities between the behavior of the children and they generalize, which is of course wrong generalization, because children are at the beginning of the development, and these people with Alzheimer or something are at the stage of disintegration. So they are, well, they are different. So historically they are at different stages. That's why they look similar, but in fact they are different. Do you remember I mentioned in the first part that this method helps us to understand things which might look similar? They are really very different. Well, and your question is very important. I have no research done with the mentally retired people or old people. That's why I cannot give you an answer. Wagner, we are professionals. If there is no research, there is no reason to say yes or no. But it seems to me that in practice, one of the methods they use is the methods of supporting these people by providing the external tools, cultural tools, which they can use to compensate their deficits. And when I will come to the principle of mediation, the cultural tools, you probably will find the answer to your question. Okay, if you can wait a little bit. That's the only answer I can do, because I cannot speculate. We have no data, we have no research evidence, we don't know.
Yeah, that is what we try to do, like give them some tools like cards and stories and so on.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why you are unconsciously used the genetic research methodology. Okay. Just make a step. Just start to use it consciously, and I can help, of course. Okay. Well, now I think I can continue. The second principle, which is a very interesting one, I call it the principle of the collision, or the principle of dramatic event. Why this experimental setting is important. Why this moment is important? It's important because of two theoretical foundations. The first theoretical foundation, what Vygotsky says, that yes, every high psychological function first appears in a form of a social relation, social interaction, first socially, then individually. But what kind of social it is, It is not just a typical, normal, usual social interaction. It is not like every morning I say hello to my students and to my neighbors. It's a social interaction, right? But nothing happens after these social interactions. These social interactions does not create any higher psychological function. The social interaction Vygotsky means is a social interaction of a special kind. Vygotsky calls it directly the dramatic collision between two people. And he says this in different places, and this is very important. Why this is very important? Because the dialectics is here. One of the basic ideas of the dialectics is the idea of the contradiction. Contradiction is a moving force for development. It is a moving force for development of every system. It might be society, it might be natural systems, it might be everything, including human mind. So, and there are different contradictions, of course, but in our real life, the contradiction exists in the form of the small dramatic collision, a dramatic event between the people. And this might be the starting point for developing changes. Something happened in your life and you think about that, you react about that, and you learn your lessons about that, and you are becoming different. There is no guarantee, of course. So dramas do not guarantee mechanically the development, because in dialectics there are no mechanisms, but at least the possibility, the opportunity, and small dramatic moments in child's life might be a very indicative moments which might show the changes, the qualitative changes in child development. So these dramatic moments might be related to age crises, as Vygotsky discovered. Okay? Crisis of age 1, crisis of age 3, crisis of age 6 or 7, or this might be the individual micro dramas, micro crises. For example, when the child should change the environment. For example, the family migrates to a different country, or the child goes from one school to another, or something happens in the family, parents divorce and so on. And those are the micro dramas the child experiences, which all are, of course, socially constructed, but they might have an impact on the child development. And these moments for us, as we collecting the data, in the data we collected, we try to identify those small moments of dramatic collisions during child's interaction. And these are the most interesting moments for us, because in these moments, the children are demonstrating what they are and how they overcome these difficulties and how they are becoming more equipped. And so these are micro genetic changes around this drama, and drama is the moving force, the contradiction. So dear colleagues, can you please switch off your microphones, because we will have time for questions, because it's echoing. Okay. Thank you. And the time for questions will be given. Okay. So now the dramatic event is a primary form of the existence of higher psychological function. And as a researcher, for me, it's very interesting to specially create a certain dramatic collision, and then observe how the child is dealing with that. We can do it through play. We did it in the play world settings. When the play world is a situation when the children have to solve the tasks and they have to take the role or whatever. But I will give you examples a little bit later. But this is very important. And when I understand this principle, when I have a huge amount of video data, I don't know what to do with video data. My first answer is that, dear colleague, let's try to find some micro dramatic collisions during this data and focus on this as a micro case studies. And this sometimes works. Okay. So, but there might be two different types of dramatic collisions. First, dramatic collisions in natural settings. Wagner, I'm saying natural means okay, in everyday settings. Okay, so this is the example. We are coming back to Eve. You see, for Eve, show and tell is an everyday experience because every day children are doing show and tell. So it was not specially created for Eve. Okay, Eve was just invited to make a show and tell experience, and she could not. And she really experiencing drama here. You see, her face she's confused, she's not happy, she's trying to do something, but looks helpless. Okay, well, the second example is the example of one of my colleagues, Fabiana. Fabi, are you here? Oh, Fabi, you should be here. Fabiana, if you're here, just say something. I saw you in the list. Okay. Fabi is very shy. She's not with us anymore. Okay. Well, what she did the research with adults. And these adults are school psychologists in Brazil. School psychologists in Brazil, they come for a special course of professional development, PD, for school psychologists in Brazil. And Fabiana was a leader of this course, and she developed this professional development course. Oh, hello, Wanda. She developed this. Wanda, my dear, can you switch off the microphone for a while?
Okay.
No, video, please. Okay, so, and how she did, instead of giving them the typical lectures and the seminars and lectures and discussions, she redesigned the whole course, asking them to bring their dilemmas from their working places. And all the course was built around discussion of their dilemmas. But dilemmas are really dramatic collisions and situations. At first, they were shocked because they were expecting the typical professional development when somebody is telling them this and this and this and this. But the teacher says, no, please bring from your working place the dilemmas you are experiencing, and we collectively discuss. At first, it was a absolutely negative reaction. They would say, no, it will not work. But then gradually, when they started to make diaries, you see this from the diaries, how teachers were gradually changing their attitude to this, and they are starting to realize the role of the school psychologist. It was a professional development, and it was also a sort of personal development of these people. And these are abstracts or extracts from their diaries. And this is what I love. You see, even after this session is over, the participants were still reading the books, rereading, but with new eyes. Now they can read the same books, but with the eyes of the whole group. They are becoming more professional, and their personality are becoming different. Okay, this is an example of application of the principle of the dramatic event as a kind of the tool to create the conditions for development. Well, this is not the complete. Thing. 5 minutes left. Flavio, are you sure that 5 minutes left?
Yes, Professor, unfortunately.
But
this
we
ends at
started
midday.
But we started. Okay. Oof. Okay, the next one is the interaction of the ideal and real form. An ideal and real form is that developed form of something should interact with the child's existing. existing forms. Flavio, can we ask for more 20 minutes?
Professor, I'm trying, but the IT team says that we must finish at midday, unfortunately. But I will try to talk to Professor Claudia, yeah? But I'm not sure.
Yeah, please, yeah. Please, we need 20 minutes because you see so many people here.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and let me know, okay? So the ideal forms are the forms developed. When the mom speaks to the baby, mom speaks with the developed language. And because of this interaction, the child develops his or her language. If there is no interaction between ideal and real form, there is no development. So, and therefore, sometimes we make a research by indicating what are ideal forms around the child. If in the classroom there are ideal forms, there will be development. If there are no, there is no development. And I'm coming back to Vala Mandili, to Saudi schools. You see, these are activities students are doing. And look here, this is an example of interaction. What teacher says is yellow. How the child's response is red. Can you imagine the child who is speaking only green, eat, yes, gray, friends, happy. That's it. Can you imagine, are there any conditions for developing of interaction? They are just answering the question with one single word. There is no interaction of ideal and real forms. Therefore, by doing this, the teacher does not provide the opportunity for development. The teacher does contrary, stops their opportunities. And while this is coming back to Eve, okay? So, and for Eve, the developed form was, this is what she wanted. Once upon a time, she was listening in a mom's car, the story from radio about 3 little pigs, and she was so thrilled and enthusiastic. She wanted to repeat the story, to tell the story to others, but she could not because of the problem. So, and then we supported her by providing the some cultural tools, and this is about principle 4. First, what we did is, yeah, before Eve, I can give you an example of how we can use external tools to compensate our memory. Counting with fingers, this is the typical example how we teach children to count. And the second example is pi. Do you remember these numbers of pi from mathematics? 3.14 and then 15927. Do you remember all of these numbers? Can you remember all these numbers in a minute? Yes, of course. If you use this, you can easily. May I have a large container of coffee? Just remember this. May 3, I 1, have 4, a 1, and so on. Okay. Can we use it with the mentally retired people to activate their memory? Of course, yes. Wagner. Okay. Okay. So, and what we did for Eve, we created a system of tools. First, there are puppets. Then it was mobilos. Through playing story, she was given a tools which helped her to tell the story. And you see here in red what Eve is doing. She is not speaking a lot, but she is doing a lot. So first doing, then speaking, or doing and speaking at the same time, because the tools were given to her. And as a result, we had this. On the left is what Eve could tell a story about 3 little pigs before our intervention, and on the right, in red, how Eve could make a story of her own In yellow is what she is doing. In red is what she is saying. You see, she speaks first and then acts. Her speech begins to regulate her actions, not as it was before, first act, then speak. And finally, we did a kind of challenging experiment. We asked teacher trying to destroy her story. For example, during Eve's show, show and tell, the teacher tried to suggest a different scenario, like the first house was built and then destroyed by the wolf. But Eve said, no, that's not the way. So Eve just telling her story according to, and demonstrating the high level of storytelling, that he remembers all the sequence of actions, he remembers all the words and so on and so on. So this is the result of development. We helped through providing the ideal form for Eve, through providing the tools, through identifying the buds of development, we came to the substantial results, and then we came in a month asking to tell us a story, and we could see that Eve, from that moment, were able to tell long stories because they were the fruit of development. Well, we hope that it exists. So I'm just summarizing because I'm afraid of sorry about the time. But this is again the model of the genetic research methodology. And what is important here, I just want to repeat what I said when I made a presentation. Wanda, do you remember that? Okay, I said that this methodology gives us an opportunity to make a coherent research. First, on the level of philosophy, that it's dialectic. Then, on the level of paradigm, this is a cultural, historical, theoretical paradigm. Then, theoretical level, the system of concepts we are using. Then, methodological level, the system of principles we are using. And all these things are related, are connected. And when you see the clear coherence from every stage. And of course, when we are bringing the results, we are analyze the results using this whole methodology. This makes this methodology so interesting. And last 10 years convinced us that it's quite interesting to use in educational research. It should not be limited to psychological studies only. So, and if you are interested to know more, well, you can contact me directly by email, and then I will send you some links and readings. Oh, it's my watch. Okay, so we can continue the discussion in any format you like. But well, we also have a reading group in Monash University, online reading group. You can join the reading group to discuss these things. And I'm very, very sorry that I had to just press my to make the last part of my presentation so short, but I think you got the point. Okay,